Yeah, I think there was an aha moment. I wasn't the first person to come up with the idea of voicemail. There were lots of versions of voicemail in existence from both small companies and big companies, but the aha moment for me was to think about it differently. So I was applying bleeding edge technologies that I had learned about at MIT to this world of telecom, which was really a different silo back then. So in the mid 80s, you had the computer and PC industry growing up in one silo, and then you had the telecom industry growing up in another silo. And so an aha moment was, well, what if I slammed those two things together? What would be different? And so as I looked at, we'd go to trade shows and I looked at the industry, you'd see refrigerator-sized boxes that cost millions of dollars that could be parked in central offices of phone companies to deliver voicemail. I thought there was a better way. What if I could take a bunch of low-cost PCs that have been commoditized and stack them up in a rack and put an Ethernet cable between them, which was sort of unheard of in the telecom world, and then throw a switch in front of that, which was unheard of by the PC world, because these two silos had grown up separately. What if I did that? And has anybody ever done that before? And I did a little research in the patent office. I used to camp myself out in Washington, D.C. and go through all the patents. And there really wasn't anything that talked about that kind of a mashup between these two very different industries. And I realized I was onto something big, because this could scale up to be big enough to handle populations of millions in cities and countries. And it was low cost. And frankly, the user interface and user experience could be much better because it was using the richer technology applied to this problem. And another interesting facet of that was there were no switches from the telecom industry that were inexpensive enough to make this a viable service. There was a company that was on the very pioneering bleeding edge of digital PBXs, which are very common today. Cisco's phone systems and all that. So very common today, but the very first one of those that ran a digital PBX phone system for small businesses over your local Ethernet, that company built one of these and then went bankrupt. But I heard about it and found out that the chief technology officer had all of the parts and pieces to that one system in his garage collecting dust, and had been collecting dust for a year or two. So I went and met this guy and said, wow, you've got a switching technology that is at a very low cost that nobody's ever done before. And he nodded and said, yeah, we do. And I asked him, well, could you put something together in the next 45 days that sits in front of my rack of commoditized PCs with an Ethernet on the backside and switch calls into the system to create that thing that I had a patent filed for, but I couldn't build from any practical parts and pieces. He said, sure, I can scale up to do that, and it just takes a few minor tweaks to get that going. Then we went to the Bell companies at the time, Bell Atlantic, Bell South, Southwestern Bell, and said, we can build this in 3 months and deliver by Thanksgiving, when everybody else in the industry was saying 18 months to 3 years minimum to deliver the functionality that they wanted. And they weren't at all sure about us, because Greg and I, my partner, and I were 25 and 26 years old. So they weren't at all sure, but we came from MIT, Harvard heritage, so they thought, well, we'll take a bet. And oh, by the way, since it's only 3 months, if we're wrong, there's no big deal. We'll go with the other guys. So they bet on us, and they took that bet because we were aggressive about our time frame and our pricing and our functionality, and yet when we started that process, we weren't really sure how we were going to build that thing, the grand idea, and yet midway through, I was able to find kind of that miracle sitting in somebody's garage on the floor in parts and pieces collecting dust that really made it all work. And we built wrote all the software and all the glue that made it all come together, and we delivered in 2 systems in Bell Atlantic territory by Thanksgiving. And the rest is history. We did $2 million in revenue that year and $20 million the next. So 1,000% growth that going from our second to third year.